Item number 22, Senate Bill 854.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Senate Bill 854, I've debated for days and days how to present this bill and what to say first and what to say at all, and if, in fact, mostly to allow questions from you. But I think a way to start it is my journey and then a journey that Representative Mike Ball had and has led us all to the point where we are today. And my journey began when I first got here and carried the legislation that helped to repeal, with Ryan Williams, the Intractable Pain Act, when I found out what opioids were doing in our state, and that due to misinformation from Purdue Pharmaceutical, Tennessee had passed a law along with 27 other states that gave the legal cover for medical, for the opioid pill mills. And so when I found that out, I thought, we've got to repeal that. And it took 2 years, but we got that bill repealed. And so the legal cover for all those pill mills, that every one of us that has a rural district in particular knew how devastating that has been to our state. And so I was really trying to clean up my rural states. And one day, Jeremy Faison came into my office and said, Senator Bowling, I need you to vote for my medical cannabis bill. I said, Jeremy Faison, you get out of this office right now. I don't even want to hear you talk about it. I will not support a medical cannabis bill. I cannot even believe we're trying to clean up this state from opioids, and here you are talking same song, second verse. He said, Senator Bowling, I know you read the materials that you have. I know you study the issues. That's all I'm asking. Please study the research of Dr. Raphael Mechoulam. And I did just that. And I started researching and studying and finding more and more, and finding out that I'd received a lot of misinformation through the years, I'm sure well-intentioned, but now that we have the ability to determine that medical cannabis is not addictive, it is not deadly, it does help many diseases. But as I'm getting ahead of myself there, because then go back to Rep. Mike Ball in Alabama, and about the same time that we passed the decriminalization of CBD oils that Senator Becky Massey had carried then, in Alabama, Representative Ball had received an email. He said, Representative Ball, I'm asking for your support for Alabama medical marijuana. First, let me state, I do not smoke pot, nor does anybody in my family. We're Christians, we don't even drink. My concern is for my 14-month-old granddaughter who is epileptic. There have been many studies to show that medical marijuana helps seizures tremendously. The type of marijuana we need has a little THC in it, so there's not much to get high properties at all. We need the other part of the plant, the CBD. Right now, our baby is just getting by. But there's been a lot of research where CBD oil with the THC is legal and has helped many patients. 20 states have now made medical marijuana legal. But after having my family live here for generations, we hate to move and try to start over in another state. And she then goes on and talks about other people with epileptic children and children who have issues with their DNA, some trisomy children. In the case of their granddaughter, she was born with a gene deletion that was never recorded in history, so that does not give our doctor much to go on to with respect to what we'll see in the future. We can give her the best of care and opted for a neurologist at a hospital in Memphis, since he has such a great reputation with neurology and epilepsy. She has no other health problems, is smart as a whip, but some days she may have up to 100 seizures. Please consider what I'm asking. Just imagine if this were your child or grandchild. Low to no THC marijuana has got such a better prognosis for her. She takes Valium now and is asleep most of the time to stop her convulsions. Please help us if you can. And so Representative Mike Ball got that email. I apologize. I've had so many of these letters.
You're fine, Senator Bowling. If you need to stop a minute, catch your breath, just take a minute. You're fine.
Thank you. I'll think of something like tripping you in the hall or something that might make me laugh. Okay, let me think. What Mike Ball did when he received that letter, he said he goes, as they're forming a commission in Alabama right now to create the Medical Cannabis Commission, which ironically is my bill that they are enacting in Alabama, but this was a couple of years ago. This was in 2019. But he said, the formation of this commission represents the culmination of a journey that began for me in October 2013 with a late-night email that I just read to you from the grandmother. I'm asking for your support of the medical marijuana. Almost resulted in its deletion. He almost just sent it off summarily. But at the time, he was committed to the mistaken notion that cannabis had no medical value, especially since law enforcement career that he had served with the Alabama Bureau of Investigation on the front line for decades, with the war being waged against this misunderstood plant. Fortunately, being an investigator, more of an investigator than a politician, caused me to read the entire email, and grief overtook my soul. I looked into the blank eyes of that baby girl, taken on her first birthday. It awakened the memories of children that he had seen throughout the years. As a grandfather, he empathized with the plight of the family, willing to allow a glimmer of faith turn them into refugees in another state rather than cower helplessly in fear as they watched the mind of this little girl being decimated with 100 daily seizures. The email ended with a moral imperative. Please help us if you can. All right, Mike thought it was a non-starter in Alabama. Well, now in Tennessee, fast forward, this was in 2 years ago in Alabama, where they had started to implement my medical cannabis bill that Dr. Schwarsky, who was the director of the Department of Neurology at UAB, saw online. They had been trying to get a bill because when they passed the legalization and decriminalization of the CBD with THC in Alabama, they also gave $1 million a year to UAB for medical cannabis research. And Dr. Schwarsky, the director there of neurology, was the head of that research, because those familiar with medical cannabis realized that in 1988 and in 1992, the endocannabinoid system was discovered in the human body, and Dr. Raphael Mechoulam made that discovery. And the CB1, the one discovered first, is where the receptors for CBD are. CBD goes to the peripheral nervous system. THC goes to the central nervous system and to the immune system. When you realize that, you see the vast implications of how it can benefit people from anything that involves the mind. And to say that we know that this is medically justified, you can take that one little piece of information and look back to what happened in America in 2003, when we had already put marijuana on Schedule 1, which means it has no medical value and can be dangerous. Well, now we find out it is not addictive, it is not deadly. Research, the advancement in research can medically show that clearly. But also, when we went to that point, we found out that it actually can help with the brain. It can help restore neurological processes in the brain. That has been medically proven. And one example of how we know that is because a patent was issued in 2003. U.S. patent number 6,630,507. That patent was given to the National Institute for Health, part of the United States government. And they held that patent until August of 2019 when it expired. But during the course of that patent, they had allowed Canna Life, which is a medical corporation out of New York, and GW Pharmaceutical, which is in Great Britain, to use aspects of that very patent in the production of medical cannabis medicines that they were using. The unfortunate part with that is because they were trying to synthesize and just use one part of the cannabis plant and then use a lot of other chemicals and whatever with it. Epidiolex was designed and created by GW Pharmaceutical, but it's $32,000 a year to treat a child with epilepsy, and it's a very narrowly defined part of epilepsy. And so it doesn't help that many people, but it does help some people. Fast forward then to why we're standing right here today, because when Mike said the formation of this commission represents the culmination of a journey that began for him on that late night email, and now Alabama is passing the medical cannabis legislation. They had it on for last year, and as everything else with so many people, that was pushed off due to COVID. And so when we now look at where we are with this bill, it does a simple thing. It establishes a functional framework, so by the bylaws, if you will, within which to authorize access to medical cannabis on a regulated basis for patients with qualifying medical conditions, and license and regulate the processes for cultivation, production, distribution, transport, selling, and acquiring medical cannabis for medical use and research. The broad purpose of this chapter is to increase low-cost public health options, alleviate suffering, develop agricultural business, incentivize research of THC benefits, and expeditiously license and track medical cannabis from cultivation to point of sale within the boundaries of this state. If you will notice, all that's talking about in Tennessee, by Tennesseans, for Tennesseans. The reason that is necessary with this bill, the legal authorization for this bill comes from the Rohrabacher Amendment, which is added annually to the federal budget, Omnibus Budget Act. And the Rohrabacher Amendment requires that the growing, selling, transporting, cultivation, everything takes place within a state, thereby making it intrastate commerce, because cannabis is not legal nationwide. It is still Schedule I, even though the United States government, who has kept it at Schedule I, held the first patent on it, which you cannot get unless you acknowledge there is medical benefit. So there's a contradiction in what's going on in Washington, but I don't think any of us are particularly surprised about that. So this General Assembly recognizes that as of 2021, 36 states, including Tennessee border states of Missouri and Arkansas, as well as Illinois at this time, have exercised their 10th Amendment rights under the United States Constitution in the Rohrabacher Amendment and legalized access to medical cannabis for many medical conditions. And so if you go forward, and we know about the epilepsy, we know about those things, but what you might not realize is the research, while forbidden because of Nixon's legislation back in the 70s, it was forbidden to do any research that would show a positive use for marijuana. But that research has been taking place internationally. And when that research has taken place, the conditions that have been discovered that positively respond in a very positive way are people with cancer, glaucoma, epilepsy, HIV/AIDS, Crohn's disease, multiple sclerosis, opioid addiction, renal failure, severe nausea or chronic pain, typically from cancer treatment, any medical condition produced cachea, persistent muscle spasm or seizures, post-traumatic stress disorder. I cannot tell you the calls I've gotten from veterans thanking me. They said that they know they could leave Tennessee and go to other states and have medical cannabis. And some of them, quite honestly, are getting it illegally, but putting their security at jeopardy because they know it works and they don't want to be addicted to opioids. Chronic radiolopathy, severe psoriasis, post-laminectomy syndrome, psoriatic arthritis, complex pain syndrome, including trigeminal neuralgia, and Lou Gehrig's disease, and Parkinson's disease. end-of-life pain management, or palliative care. Traumatic brain injury. I had a young man talk with me today. He was in an accident. He had CBD that he was taking legally, and that was in his body. It was the worst traumatic brain injury Vanderbilt had ever seen. Now, Vanderbilt is a trauma one. It gets the worst. And they were able to treat him, and they told him that because he took CBD oil, he was 40% already ahead of anyone else, because the neurological components, and I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, but I can read and I can understand. He was that much ahead of the curve, and he is now normally functioning, very healthy young man who was able to continue his life according to what they had told him at Vanderbilt, partially because he already used CBD. We're talking about CBD with a little THC in medical cannabis. And let me explain why you need the THC. As they discovered the CBD and its healing, restorative properties, it works better if you have a fire and put a little kerosene on the fire and it burns a little faster, a little hotter, a little longer. That's the same way that they have discovered that the THC helps to activate the healing qualities that are in the CBD. Tourette syndrome, autism spectrum disorder, fibromyalgia, sickle cell anemia. The following conditions if the patient's younger than 18, cerebral palsy, cystic fibrosis, osteogenesis imperfecta, muscular dystrophy, and terminal conditions, and then any conditions approved by the commission pursuant to rulemaking. All of the rulemaking done by the commission will be the UAPA, and they, as research comes in, I didn't want to tie this bill down to only what we know today, because I think it's important that we're looking at where the research, now that it's available, will take us. And to that point, I think that one of the things that Mike Ball had said, an investigator's thought process operates like a rotating cement mixer. Opinions within it are shaped and reshaped by new evidence as it is acquired and tossed in the mix of ideas, theories, and stirring about. Thirst for truth supplies the impetus that keeps an investigator's mind turning, with refreshing new discoveries acting like water, keeping the conceptual mixture from setting up too soon. Truth seeks those willing to humble themselves enough to recognize that they never know as much as they think they know, and are not afraid to rethink their options and opinions. Those who think they know everything are incapable of learning much of anything, but those who assess themselves honestly and allow their opinions to be shaped and reshaped as they continue to think through new evidence are rewarded with refreshing drinks from the fountain of truth. And I will admit that's where I was when Jeremy Faison came up and said,
Senator Bowling, you've got 2 minutes left for your opening statement.
Okay.
We have a Senate Rule 12 that actually limits the statements to 20 minutes.
I appreciate it.
Okay.
The commission will be appointed by the governor and the speakers. The people on the commission, 12 people, one with professional experience in industrial or agricultural systems management, professional experience in legal or social issues, and someone with post-certification. I have 2 people with post-certification on the commission, people in public health, in mental health, substance abuse, multiple crop development. So this is agriculture and medicine and law coming together to make sure that the commission in Tennessee is well equipped to administer the Tennessee Medical Cannabis Program, which is by the interstate commerce particular to Tennessee. And then we have the regulatory authorities in there, the protocols for testing that have to test medical cannabis. As we've talked before, I think Senator Kyle had asked questions about that. You want to have that third-party testing. And all of the licensing and everything is right here in the bill. I will tell you that I have received calls from across the United States saying, I wish we'd included that in our bill. This bill was composed of the 36 states that have created medical cannabis programs, the things that worked in those states and that would work in rural Tennessee, and the things that failed in those states I made sure were not included in this particular bill. I appreciate your patience in listening to my presentation. I would pray that you have listened and learned, and I pray that you will give me your vote, and I welcome your questions. Thank you.
All right. Is there a motion on the bill? It's been moved by Senator Kyl. Is there a second on the bill? Is there a second on the bill? Seeing no second. Okay, there is a second on the bill. It's been seconded by Senator Roberts. So, Senator Bowling, there are no amendments. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, no amendments. And we do have some people who would like to testify on the bill. So if we could, without objection, we will go into recess. So without objection, we're now in recess. And we have a list here. We'll start with Mr. John Kearns. Mr. Kearns is available with us via Zoom. Mr. Kearns, welcome to the Judiciary Committee, and you are recognized for your 2 minutes of testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to appear before you today. I am pleased to be here in support of SB0854, the Tennessee Medical Cannabis Act. There is a robust, active, lucrative cannabis market in Tennessee right now, but it's a black market. Patients in Tennessee commonly choose cannabis-derived solutions for medical conditions today. Whether we want to acknowledge it or not, every Tennessean has neighbors, family members, parents, teachers, coaches, first responders, pastors in our lives who are choosing cannabis relief already. The problem is that Tennessee cannabis policy currently criminalizes those who seek addiction-free relief. Irrational criminalization aside, there's the issue of product safety. Right now, the neighbor on your street who seeks a cannabis product for relief must turn to a friend of a friend, or an old roommate, some shady character at work, or worse, a street corner. And there's no way to know where these products come from. And they're often riddled with toxic pesticides, molds, and heavy metals. My company, New Bloom Labs, provides the chemical analysis of cannabis products for the purposes of legal compliance, quality control, and consumer safety. We exist simply to ensure that cannabis products are safe. Thankfully, SB0854 outlines a stringent standard for consumer safety testing of all medical cannabis products in Tennessee. We have the ability in Tennessee to deliver safe, effective, addiction-free cannabis products to citizens today. Because of companies like mine and with thoughtful legislation like SB0854, Tennesseans can begin to realize the benefits of safe access to cannabis without the risk of criminal prosecution or the ingestion of toxic black market cannabis. The primary question before this committee is simple. Does Tennessee continue to waste taxpayer dollars criminalizing those who seek addiction-free relief, or do we create a safe, revenue-positive program that can serve as an effective alternative to opiate-based treatments? Senate Bill 854 is good, well-researched, and thoughtfully derived legislation, and I urge this committee's support.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Kearns. If you would hold on here, just in case we have any questions for Mr. Kearns on the bill? Seeing none, Mr. Kearns, thank you for being with us today. Next on our list is Mr. Kevin Coons. Mr. Coons, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All
Can
right.
you hear me?
Mr. Coons, you are recognized. Give us your name for the record, and if you represent an organization, who you represent. If not, just give us your name and then your comments.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Kevin Coons. I'm from Chattanooga, Tennessee, and I'm the president of Wonder Lodge Investment Partners and AlphaTauri Holdings.
Okay, you're recognized.
All right, thank you, sir. So thank you for allowing me, Mr. Chairman, and the members of the committee for the opportunity to speak this afternoon. I support Senate Bill 854. Senator Bowling has carefully crafted an extremely pragmatic and sensible bill that interweaves the very best practices of medical cannabis bills of more than 36 states, 3 U.S. territories. It's quite overarching piece of legislation that provides a much needed relief for Tennesseans who suffer from more than 30 different debilitating medical maladies. It will significantly decrease the over 2,000 or nearly 2,000 opioid-related fatal overdoses per year by Tennesseans and provide a significant boost to the state economy. Following the bill as I've been disheartened by the number of incorrect comments, which have been attributed to legislatures, things like the bill is illegal or the bill's unconstitutional. You know, aspiring constitutional pundits will reference a Supreme Court case from 2019 involving our own state, which involved a federally legal and interstate regulated product of distilled spirits and wines, and invoked the Commerce Clause of the U.S. Constitution. In addition, it's also charged that some states or states may not attach residency requirements with regards to the issuance of licenses for cannabis cultivation and distribution, et cetera. But it's really not possible to draw this straight line comparison between alcohol and medical cannabis. So 854 is calling for the establishment and requirements of licensing of pharmaceutical grade medical cannabis. And states have been allowed to regulate these areas that support the health and safety of its residents. While it's true there are a number of lawsuits that have been initiated in states that are predominantly recreational marijuana, this is the states where large multi-global marijuana entities are fighting to squeeze out local farmers of Tennessee and other states because they understand the financial stakes. However, what we do know is a vast majority of these lawsuits
Mr.
are still pending.
Mr. Coons, your time is up. So 2 minutes. Are there any questions?
For 854, thank you.
Are there any questions for Mr. Coons? Seeing none, Mr. Coons, thank you for being with us today. All right. Next is Mr. Chris Summerall. I think he's here in person. Mr. Summerall, if you would, please come forward. Make sure that mic's on. Sometimes it's a little, tricky to
off here.
And you may have to lean down. You're a tall guy.
All right.
All right. Mr. Summerall, you're recognized. And if you represent somebody, tell us who you represent. If not, just give us your name for the record.
Cool. I'm Chris Summerall from Chattanooga, Tennessee. I represent the farmers of Tennessee. Many of you guys up here know my family. I'm from Tennessee. Okay, born and raised. I am a cannabis farmer, to be specific, of over 20 years. And you say, well, how does that happen? Well, I've managed to navigate through the system through red tape, fine print, and between the lines. And that's how the cannabis system was formed, all right, across the country. It's very hard to navigate. It's very hard to read between those lines a lot of times. I didn't want to come up here and do this. This is out of my ballpark completely. I shovel dirt. That's what I do. But I got an email 2 days ago, and I had to come up here and address the email. I'm not going to read it verbatim, but it had 3 topics. It was simply a friend of mine contacting one of y'all about the bill, Senate Bill 854, and the response had 3 issues in it, and I'm going to talk about those 3 issues real briefly. The first issue is the residency requirement. Every bill in the U.S. that has been written for cannabis up to this point in time has a residency requirement in it. There's never been one written without it. There's only 2 states that have kind of, Oregon did away with theirs. Colorado still has it in place, and so does California, but they just still kind of don't abide by it, okay? As a farmer in Tennessee, this is a must, guys. This is a must. This is why the Rohrabacher Amendment was put into place, as well as for the Commerce Clause. Okay, this is why this was put into place, was for medical cannabis industry. It disheartens me that we're going to cut local farmers out and bring in out-of-state big business. In my opinion, I mean, I can hear the headlines now, Tennessee, Senate shuts out Tennessee farmers to bring in out-of-state big money. I mean, I think they call that a political suicide. I don't know, but the farmers need to be heard. We want our piece of this pie too, and we don't want it to go to a big conglomerate from Missouri or Arkansas or California or Colorado. That's not good business here locally in this state. The second issue being that Commerce Clause. Okay, that's been a part of it throughout this whole thing since 2019. That's been an issue. Not 19.
Mr. Summerall, your time is up.
Time is up. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
I've actually let you go almost half a minute over.
Couldn't do it fast
All
enough.
right, let's wait and see if we have any questions. Just stay right there. Any questions for Mr. Summerall? All right, Senator Roberts, you recognize.
I may have missed something because I got distracted here for a moment. Sir, you're for or against the bill? I'm sorry.
100% for it.
Oh.
This is a great bill. If we had this bill in California 15 years ago, we wouldn't be in this mess today. And I applaud y'all for standing up. And I get a lot of bad press about this in the cannabis industry, but if more states had taken a stand like y'all have on this issue, we wouldn't be in this mess today. Okay, and it's perfectly fine to say we're not going to make a change until this federal thing happens. That was the third thing on here. I guess that was the philosophical issues. Okay, that's I don't like it either. I've been doing this for 20 years. If you worked in the Oreo plant for 20 years, you think you'd like Oreos? No, I hate this plant, guys. I don't want to smell it ever again. I tell my son daily, you're not allowed to be in this industry. It's ugly, it's dirty. This bill cleans it up. It's very, very conservative. So conservative, in fact, I don't think I'm going to make $1 on it. I don't. But Tennessee needs this because of the storm that's about to come. 100% for certain, a federal bill is on the horizon. And we're looking down the barrel of a loaded gun of an unregulated industry. And I've lived that twice, guys. Twice I've lived in that unregulated industry. And we're going to spend tens of thousands, if not millions of dollars trying to clean it up because this society of cannabis users.
Appreciate Mr. Summerall. Thank you. Any further questions for him? Seeing none? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Summerall, for being here today. We now have Ms. Elizabeth Stroker with Department of Safety. Stroker, if you would, please come forward. And as the last three speakers, you have 2 minutes, and then we'll see if you have any questions. If you would, please give us your name and who you're with for the record, and then your comments on the legislation.
Elizabeth Stroker, Legislative Director for the Department. Oh, sorry, Chairman. Sometimes I forget I have it on. Elizabeth Stroker, Legislative Director for the Department of Safety. I'm going to turn it over to the Colonel since he's the one y'all really want to talk to.
Okay. Colonel, if you would, please step forward, give us your name and who you're with for the record, and then you'll have 2 minutes for your comments.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Matt Perry, Colonel of the Highway Patrol Committee, thank you for your time. We understand the intent of the bill and trying to take care of, potentially those with medical issues like so many of these bills. However, our biggest concern is impaired driving, the safety of Tennesseans on the roadway, and anytime you legalize or allow a drug, we're worried about the illegal use of it. And that's our biggest concern, is safety of citizens of Tennessee.
All right. Short comments. Any questions for our witness? Seeing none, Colonel, thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Elizabeth, thank you for being here. All right, next we have, well, I think I don't know if he's available via Zoom or if he's here, the Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Tim Jones with the Department of Health. Is he available?
Hello, I'm here on Zoom. Can you hear me okay?
Okay, we can hear you now. So, sir, if you would, please give us your name and who you're with for the record.
Yeah,
and then you have two minutes.
Yeah, Dr. Tim Jones. I'm the Chief Medical Officer at the Tennessee Department of Health. I'll just, you've heard a lot. I'll just clarify a couple of things. First of all, the term medical cannabis does not change the product that we're talking about. The term medical just refers to what conditions or the fact that it's taken for medical reasons. You heard the term earlier, I think low THC marijuana. There are marijuana products with a huge range of THC content. Some of it's very, very high, and that would not be regulated in a different way, whether it was used for a particular medical condition or not. I think it's quite clear that the list of 30 plus medical conditions for which this might be approved here is really extensive and very, very broad. Many of the conditions are entirely subjective. So if I were to say that I have nausea or chronic back pain, there would be no way for a physician to prove one way or the other. So in essence, this comes very, very close to legalizing marijuana for anybody who really wants it. Marijuana, there are 3 FDA-approved THC containing products, one of which is for patients with epilepsy. You heard a lot about that before. So essentially, these are psychoactive substances which do not treat diseases themselves. They don't treat cancer. They don't cure epilepsy. They are psychoactive substances which clearly can have benefit for symptoms, but generally not the medical conditions themselves. And I'll stop with that unless there are questions.
May I, Mr. Chairman?
All right, hold on. Let me see if any committee members want to ask, and then I'll go to the sponsor. So any questions for the doctor? Seeing none, Senator Bowling, you are recognized to ask the doctor a question.
I would just say to you that medical cannabis is a recognized legal term, and it is employed in 36 states now, and it's greatly different from recreational marijuana. There is no comparison there. There are formulations, there are different strands, and almost all of the medical cannabis bills have a low level of THC. It is there to help the CBD do its miracle work, if you will. And there are trial-tested uses of this in many countries, and now with waivers in states. That's why the doctor that's the director of the Department of Neurology at UAB chose to use this medical cannabis bill in order to allow that product to be used in Alabama by those that are suffering from the very same conditions that are listed in this bill. So I would ask you, have you read the 2020 article published by the U.S. Pharmacist magazine regarding medical cannabis?
Dr. Jones?
Not that specific article, though I'm familiar with a huge amount of literature about this. But no, not that specific article. I have not.
Have you read the research by Dr. Raphael Meshulam of Israel?
No.
Okay. All right, any further questions for our witness? Seeing none, thank you for being with us today. So without objection, we are going to go back into session, and I will open it up to questions for the sponsor. Are there any members that have any questions for the sponsor? Seeing none, Senator Rose, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Boland, if you could briefly tell me, I think there are 3 drugs right now that are approved and being used, as I understand it, in Tennessee to treat epilepsy and some other, but primarily epilepsy, maybe in nausea. I think Marinol, Epilodex, and then there's another one that are currently being used. There is the chief, and I don't have permission to share his name, and I apologize for not getting it. I realized that he'd given permission to share it with someone that could share it with me, but not, and I think I could get it, but since I don't have it, I'm just going to say this. He just says there's no need for medical marijuana. That's the main reason to oppose it. Children who need THC, the active ingredient in can get this by prescription, have been able to do so for years. And so what would you say to this gentleman about these 3 drugs that are already approved?
Those 3 drugs, Epidiolex, which is for a very specific rare kind of epilepsy, and it can be taken for 90 days, and it will work with some children, 30% of the children who take it who have this rare disease. However, after 90 days, it stops working. And the reason being the same reason that some of the CBD stopped working for children with epilepsy, because it needs the THC. But Epidiolex used the U.S. patent that recognizes the medical benefits but wants to synthesize it entirely. And that's what GW Pharmaceutical did it in England. And the federal government has gotten billions of dollars of royalties off of Epidiolex, which only works in 30% of the children, 30% of the time. Mm-hmm.
All right, any further questions for the sponsor on the bill? Seeing none, and Senator Bowling, before I allow you to close, I want to make, I want to say a few things. Apparently 2 of the 3 speakers who spoke in favor of this bill referenced an email that I sent somebody a couple days ago, and I want to talk about what I brought up in that email. Now, I'm not sure. I don't know Mr. Coons or Mr. Summerall personally, so I don't know if they are attorneys. But the attorney that this legislature relies on, or the state relies on more than anybody. I've had conversations with his office about this bill, and they actually do believe that it is likely a violation of the Commerce Clause, both the residency requirement and the requirement that, that it all be done by Tennessee people. Now, there can be disagreements between attorneys on that, but the attorney that we rely on for advice, that is what his office told me, specific to this bill. And even before, at least I can speak for myself, before I can get to the policy behind the bill, I have to first get past whether I believe the bill's constitutional or not. And I can't get past that. I can't get past that based on my own basic understanding of the Constitution, but then also based on my conversation with the Attorney General's office. And and to the sponsor, that's where I'm at on this bill.
May I speak to that?
As a sponsor, I told you I was going to recognize you for closing remarks when I got through making a statement. And so with that, I'll look again, see if anybody else would like to say anything. If not, I'm going to recognize the sponsor to close. So Senator Rose, you're recognized.
Mr. Chairman, just for the record, I'm going to vote no on this bill, and I've talked to Senator Bowling about this, and I don't have mixed feelings because I'm not comfortable with the fact. I've said from the time that I started to run for Senate 2 years ago that I could support medical marijuana if it was prescribed by a doctor and dispensed by a pharmacy, and this does not cover that. So therefore, I will be a no, and I appreciate all the work and the passion that my colleague has put into this. Thank you very much.
Okay, Senator Gardenhire, are you recognized?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 3 or 4 years ago, Representative Mike Carter and I introduced a bill to allow, under certain restrictions, the production of marijuana and the testing of it by a medical facility here, and the growing of it was to be done by a university that was approved, and this was to treat children with seizures. It passed, but it ran into a lot of federal roadblocks, and both the university and the medical facility backed away from it when the federal government intervened. We've tried to pass these types of bills, and it's failed, and until the federal government does something, I don't think we should be able to step out and doing this, and I will be a no vote on it too.
Okay. Thank you, Senator Gardenhire. Anybody else? If not, I'm going to recognize the sponsor to close. I'm sorry, Senator Roberts, you're recognized.
Just a real quick question. How many other states currently allow medical marijuana?
Because medical marijuana programs in individual states have been legal in the United States since 2014, according to the Rohrabacher Amendment that's added annually to the Omnibus Budget Act. 36 states are allowing their citizens access to this identifiable, researched, usable medical product because it's legal within the state in an intra-state capacity, which is what the amendment that authorizes it. This is the legal authorization. It's attached every year to the omnibus budget. And it states that no DOJ funds, that's state or local or federal, can be used to prohibit the use or to prevent certain states from implementing their own state laws that authorize the use, distribution, possession, and cultivation of medical marijuana. So it is legal. 36 states are doing it. 6 other states are in the process of passing it. That will be 46 states, over 2/3 of the population of the United States of America, are allowing their citizens access to something that will alleviate pain, will be affordable, will help curb the opioid addiction, and is legal because it is intrastate, just like in 2006 when Tennessee passed a firearm bill that said Firearm Freedom Bill. And I've got the list of the people who voted for that bill. And that was the bill to establish intrastate commerce in firearms that were built in Tennessee, used by Tennesseans. And many of you are on the list of people who voted for that legislation.
Okay, Senator Roberts, you recognize?
Thank you for answering the question, and I'm just going to say to the committee, I'm going to vote for this, and that may surprise some people, but I just, I've gotten to the point where I realize how many people that I actually know are driving to Illinois because they've got some, medical condition or cancer or whatever, and they're looking for relief. And I'm just going to tell you, the genie's out of the bottle, and it's not going back in. And maybe that's, kind of an odd thing to cite for a policy standpoint, but we're at a point where a whole lot of other states are doing it, and people are leaving Tennessee to go to other states to do this. And I suspect you could probably just sit on the interstate on I-24 and watch the Tennessee license plates drive through Paducah on their way to Illinois. And I just think if that's what people want and they're willing to do, there's some framework here. I don't agree with all the bill. I don't think the bill is perfected yet, but that's where I am. So
Okay.
that's I don't that may seem out of character for me, but that's why I voted for it in government operations, and I'm going to vote for it again today. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Roberts. Senator Bowling, you recognize to close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a tough pill indeed. But I gave you a brochure here, a printout of something that came out of the March American Legion. I think it speaks to the issue of why it's so important that we reestablish our pharmaceutical abilities within each state in the United States of America and using medical cannabis that is available, affordable, and will help to be the only offensive weapon we have against opioids. But this article lets you know that since March of last year, there's been no FDA approval of anything because our pharmaceuticals are coming from communist China. Our pharmaceuticals are coming predominantly from Wuhan in communist China. And as COVID-19 began to spread and demand generic drugs skyrocketed, in Wuhan, China, the drug manufacturing hub shut down. That's why our former president had required that we list the essential generics that are needed in America today, because right now, this is a national security issue that we don't make or manufacture. China has undercut all of our pharmaceuticals. They control what we take, and now they're coming out of China with no FDA oversight over the last year. So all of those arguments are totally bogus because of the reality of what's going on. And the reality that medical cannabis is safe, never an overdose, never an addiction. And we're saying, no, we prefer to get our medicines from communist China. So please take the time to read that. But I want to let you know also that I did get the opinion of one of the state's recognized constitutional lawyers, Mr. Bob Peters of Winchester. And he spoke to the fact that the duration requirement to hold a liquor license was struck down because it violated the Dormant Commerce Clause. The main clause, the main point of the Dormant Commerce Clause is to prevent states from adopting protectionist measures and thus preserve a national market for goods and services. Under Dormant Commerce Clause, if a state law discriminates against out-of-state goods or non-resident economic actors, the law can be sustained only as a showing that it narrowly is tailored to advance a legitimate local purpose. But there is not a national market for marijuana. It's Schedule I. It's illegal. So the Dormant Clause does not apply. The intrastate commerce laws do apply, and that's why it's tailored to show it is entirely a Tennessee product grown by Tennesseans, produced by Tennesseans, regulated by Tennesseans for the consumption of Tennesseans. That is a difference with a distinction between the liquor license that is interstate. This is, by definition, with the Rohrabacher Amendment, intrastate. I think that is a difference with a distinction that needs to be pointed out. But at the same time, I want you to think carefully, because right now in America, now that the patent that the company had, that was the U.S. patent, it has gone to China, the Canna Life, that company, and received the patent there. So I'm assuming that what they want to do is going to restrict any medical cannabis to synthetic products coming out of China by this international corporation. If you want that for yourself and your friends and your neighbors, I don't know why. This bill is legal, it's constitutional, it is supported by the Rohrabacher Amendment, and 36 states and 6 more in the process. When it does go off Schedule 1, and it will, as soon as they get their finances in order for this company that's international to start producing it in China, it'll be taken off. And you heard it here. But what's going to happen is the great sucking sound is going to be the money and the regulatory oversight going out of Tennessee as we are inundated with product from who knows where, containing who knows what, and charged who knows how. And right now, my bill has a $24 million positive fiscal note, which is very conservative, plus a $2 million fiscal note in the deterrence of people being incarcerated because they're being forced in Tennessee to go to the black market. The black market in Tennessee sells marijuana every day, all day long. And if you don't know your sheriff and he doesn't take you to the biggest plat of marijuana in his county, he's not doing his job. Every county has one. It is there, and it's a $1.5 billion market. My bill creates a regulated, legal, through the Rohrabacher Amendment, constitutional program for Tennesseans to have access to medical cannabis. I would implore that all of you rethink your vote, because if you think that you're going to sit there and wait till the powers that be take it off, although they've already acknowledged through their patent that there is medical benefit to medical cannabis. And if you wait till then, we will have no medical program. We will have no control. We will have no regulatory oversight. Our farmers will be stomped in the dust by the international giant collaborations that exist this very day. I think that to vote no on this is not only short-sighted, it's ill-informed, and it's a danger to every one of us in the state of Tennessee. I would ask you to please vote yes. It's got to go to health. Let health make the determination. But judicially, this is a legal bill authorized by the Rohrabacher Amendment, and I'm asking you to rule on the judicial qualifications of this bill.
All right. Thank you. The question is put. Madam Clerk, take the vote.
Senator Gardenhire? No. Votes no. Senator Kyle? Aye. Votes aye. Senator Lundberg? No. Votes no. Senator Roberts? Aye. Votes aye. Senator Robinson? Senator Rose? No. Votes no. Senator Stevens? No. Votes no. Senator White? No. Votes no. Chairman Bell?
No.
Votes no. Mr. Chairman, you have 2 ayes and 6 noes.
2 ayes and 6 noes. Your bill fails and stays in committee. Thank you,
Thank you,
Senator
Committee.
Bowling.